So to conclude, even though Civilization 6 takes some liberties when it comes to historical accuracy, we can all agree that the game is still splendid, a true gem that I would recommend to everyone who loves history and video games. If you made it this far, I wish to thank you one too many Civilizations times for watching today's video.
Wait. Hold it right there, Fox. What do you mean by some liberties when speaking about historical accuracy? What even is this mess? How can a non-historical game be enjoyed despite its fallacies?
Damn it, Dandoz, how do you always keep popping in my videos without any formal invitation? It feels like all of this is planned or something, like if all of this was scripted weeks ago.
Stop making meta-commentary, Fox. This is not a video about the Stanley Parable. Not another one. In today's video, we are discussing historicity and gameplay. How clearly am I right about prioritizing history over the gaming experience?
Wait, what do you mean we? Is this another collaboration?
There's only a way to find out, old Fox. Roll the intro!
Stop stealing my intro! Huh, déjà vu. History and historicity are cornerstones for many games. Think of strategy titles like the Total War series or even action-adventure games like the Assassin's Creed franchise that make usage of history as core for its foundations. Well done historicity enhances the player immersivity, no doubt about it, but does too much historical accuracy come to the detriment of gameplay? Does too little historical precision damage the player's experience?
Of course historical inaccuracies damage the gaming experience. You see, every time the developers get something wrong about the game period, they risk destroying the immersiveness of the experience if the players spot it. It's like in science fiction. The less suspension of disbelief the player has to use, the better.
What you say may be true from a theoretical point of view, but from a practical one, not too much. History is complex and it would be too pedantic to have every game feeling like a simulator. Imagine a strategy game set during the World War where your tanks just randomly jumps mid-battle, or a game in the Middle Ages where your character is not able to read books because he or she is illiterate as almost all the population in that era.
Joke's on you, old Fox. It actually exists a game where, until you actively learn how to read, the order of the character in words is mixed. It's called Kingdom Come Deliverance, and it's one of the games that better represent the Central European Middle Ages, being set in Bohemia, 15th century. However, we need to do a philosophical and terminological digression. As stated by Stefano Caselli of the Digital Games Department of the University of Malta, it's literally impossible to make a game historically accurate, because the player's liberty of doing different action creates the possibility of doing things that didn't actually happen, making the game automatically non-historical. So the point is the research of historical verisimilitude, being the likelihood of the things that can happen during the gameplay, in order to not interrupt the immersion of the player and making the game believable.
Alright, fair enough, but for convenience we'll keep it calling historical accuracy rather than historical verisimilitude, because the title has to be clickbait, because for the sake of pragmatism. In any case, you know what, Dandoz, I do agree. We do need to have a philosophical discussion regarding today's topic, historicity and gameplay, where compromises need to be made in order to keep a game historical and fun to play. No matter the time era selected for a game setting, it is expected from the developers to have some degree of faithfulness in the crafted adventure. You certainly do not want to play a game set in feudal Japan where you can use a submachine gun, except for comedy reasons perhaps. Yet it would be unproductive to be extremely picky and make the game quote-unquote too realistic. Sure, it may work at times, but it may come at the cost of good gameplay. We give for granted simplification in game mechanics when needed, to make the player's fruition of the title more natural. Sure, it may be unrealistic to have the hero kill half of the enemy army in a shooter, but it is undeniable that the player's fun of the game has priority over realism.
Of course, one-to-one realism is impossible. It's a game, and even simulators need to do some simplification and abstractions. Still, my dear Fox from Umbria, the point is that realism and historicity can be a factor of how much fun a game can be. Take Verdun and its sequels, for instance. These games are much more accurate than Battlefield 1, creating a different kind of gameplay with many more difficulties, like having limited amounts of powerful weapons and having to deal with actual trench warfare. So, being historical can be a way to attract players. This is also the case of the aforementioned Kingdom Come Deliverance. Its appeal is to be the almost unique RPG game in first person from medieval times with no fantasy element at all.
True, but to make a game historically accurate, sacrifices need to be made for its gameplay. Let us take War of Rights, a Mount and Blade-like game set during the American Civil War, as a second example. The game's strong point may be its immersive, quote-unquote, historically accurate warfare with its slow loading rifles, commanders, orders, ranks, lines and whatnot, but this characteristics makes the game slow and hard to digest for casual players. There is the appeal for experienced the mechanics by some people, but it is undeniable that the game's appeal is more limited than other shooters.
What you say might be true, but it's evident the great fascination that a well-done historical setting can have. As you said, the technology of the Civil War period can be limiting, but this restriction surely creates a powerful setting that can favor role-playing. Thanks to historical accuracy, games such as War of Right or Mount and Blade Warband Napoleonic Wars have lots of regiments made of real players that organize themselves in order to fight in true historical fashion. In this way, the video game becomes more of a social activity, similar to historical reenactment societies, contributing, even if on a small scale, to the popularization of history.
This is where I do not agree entirely. There's certainly a compromise to be made when designing a historical experience without sacrificing the game part of video games. Rising Storm 2 is a good example in this regard. The game's arcade enough for everyone to pick up and play, but it does implement some realism by applying limited classes, magazine management and bleeding, just to name a few. Point being that there is certainly fun to be had with a semi-realistic game that does not limit the player's gaming experience at the expense for historical accuracy. And actually, speaking of limits, I think no better game exemplifies the benefits of surpassing historical limits to make the game more engaging than the Age of Empires series. In a game like Age of Empires 2, set in the medieval ages, the player has a myriad of factions to play with, from the Mayans to the Magyars to the Malians to the Malays, just to name a few that start with the letter M. All the civilizations present in the game are extremely different from a historical point of view, yet they all play about the same even despite that, having most of the unit roster in common but a handful of unique units. It's not a coincidence that Age of Empires 2 has one of the most competitive and vital meta multiplayer scenes since its original release in 1999.
Surely Age of Empires 2 is a colossal, but still, Historicity can bring even more variety in the experiences a player can have inside the same game, and in this way greatly enhance the longevity, especially in single-player games. For this reason, Victoria 3 is considered by many as a bland game. Playing Great Britain, Morocco or Japan almost feels the same, and the differences are almost only cosmetic. Even buying the new DLC about France, it doesn't change much. On the other hand, Crusader Kings 2 is much more historically accurate, depicting in a tangible manner the differences between cultures and religion, with specific mechanics that have to be considered during gameplay. Christian rulers need a claim acknowledged by the Church to declare war. Islamic ones need not to become decadent and opulent, in order not to risk a popular revolt. Maritime republics, like my glorious Pisa, have to elect their leaders and can start wars for dominance on trade outposts and cities. Tribes need to impose their prestige by sacking enemies, while nomad peoples do not have settlement at all. As you can see, having all this historical accuracy can bring so much variety. It's almost like having more than one game in one!
The examples you bring are fair, but two counter-examples from my end would be the historical implementation both the Total War Saga and Sid Meier's Civilization franchise have. In both titles, most factions control the same and have similar objective, with a few differences of mechanics justified by history. In Total War Rome 2, factions have distinctive units depending on their history, but nobody is stopping the player to conquer the entirety of the known world with Celtic tribes or Eastern kingdoms, even when lacking a solid and structural base of government like the Romans or Carthaginians. Likewise, in Sid Meier's Civilization, certain factions have certain benefits depending on the civilization's unique building, often linked to real-life inventions that gave that civilization an edge over the others. And to add salt to injury, have you ever played Rome 2 in multiplayer? Sure, units are historically accurate, but come on, the game is super imbalanced. Those damn Romans are just too powerful. The Romans, what have they ever done for us?
Like the foundation of Western civilization? You know, slavery, imperialism, colonialism, oh damn, let's not dive in that rabbit hole again. Let's go back to the historicity of video games, okay? I mean, being balanced and being historically accurate are not necessarily things that don't go together. If the game aims to be a good multiplayer game, then a solution is to restrict the scope of the setting, like in Shogun 2 and Napoleon. In both cases, the armies you can field are really similar to each other, making it impossible to outclass the enemy just because of your unit roster. Still, the various factions are unique, having more specialized troops in some sectors. In Shogun 2, the Oda clan have better trained peasant spearmen, being able to form different formations reflecting the actual ability of Oda Nobunaga to quickly organize large armies from levies. However, for the single-player experience, balancing is not that important, and variety and different rosters can be a really good way to make each run different and also introducing different difficulty levels. In the original Rome Total War, still having massive historical inaccuracies, yes, I'm looking at you, Bronze Age Egypt, the imbalance of the units is actually fun. Numidians have a really limited roster that well represents the tribal nomadic desert society of the early Berbers. Defeating the Romans with these units can be extremely difficult, but that can be a fun challenge, and also it is historically accurate, because in reality Berbers managed to conquer Rome's land only after the collapse of the Roman Empire.
Speaking of single-player games, especially story-driven ones, variety can be achieved through fiction. Titles like Assassin's Creed make usage of history not much for its gameplay but for its narrative. The games generally take some liberties when implementing various historical eras, but they do usually incorporate historical characters somewhat faithfully and adaptively, so as not to disturb the real historical timeline. However, I do agree with you that some mechanics do disturb historicity too much. The best example to make is the grappling hook from Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I understand the difficulties of implementing smooth parkour in Victorian London. However, I do find too excessive a Just Cause style hookshot that does not even exist in real life today. Having said that, I do believe that there is a sweet point between alleviating historical accuracy and gameplay, without breaking the immersion the player has in the game itself. Historicity and gameplay do not need to be opposing forces, but developers need to be careful what they sacrifice in order to improve the other. Simulating history games like we cited in the video may have their appeal, but at the cost of being difficult to play casually, while other less historical games can keep the charm but not the mechanics of the time period they are exploring.
You definitely are right about this. While mechanics must be as historical as possible in order to make the player dive in the time period, the story narrated by the game can have much more freedom, exploring the space of what we don't know about the past, like people personalities, private life, and motivations. The Assassin's Creed series does an excellent job in this direction, putting all the more fictional and also fantasy elements of the plot in the obscure area of conspiracy and secret societies. With the exception of the first title, in all the other games the Templars and the Assassins are orders that are unknown to most of the contemporaries, making it believable why true history doesn't talk about them. Another feature that exponentially increased the historical accuracy of Assassin's Creed Origin is the Discovery mode. In this, the game tells us more information about the time period, the life of the commoners, the architecture, and important people's biographies. Also, the developers explain their choices in representing things that we are not sure about, in this way helping the player to understand how historiography works. In any mean, this is perfect, and a step forward is always followed by several steps back. Like, have you seen the giganormous stone statues of Assassin's Creed Odyssey? They are even physically impossible! Come on, I'm so pissed about them. Maybe it's better if we just jump to the conclusion, otherwise this is going to become a rage video.
So, when does historicity play a role to enhance a game, and when does it hold it back? When do non-historical choices by the developers come to improve or impair the gameplay of a game? Today we discuss various games that use history as their main selling point, and thus their role history plays in the digital world. There are certainly games that put upfront and prioritize this historicity to deliver an accurate account of what happened, while others merely use history as a pretext to deliver a unique story and thus an enjoyable game to play. So, which one is the right balance between gameplay and historicity? It depends. It always does.
I see a pattern in this discussion video, Fox, but yes, you're right. Every kind of game can find a different equilibrium. If the game focuses on multiplayer, then the more it is historical, the more it will become niche, but different from other games. In the case of strategy games, the more specific the scope of the setting is, the more historicity becomes functional to balancing. Instead, if the game is story-driven, then the best option is to use the historical setting as a way to stimulate the imagination of both the writer and the player, trying to use the spaces not covered by factual history. In each of these cases, it is virtuous by the developers to include some kind of specification on how much and in which way the game is non-historical, specifying that these things are not mistakes, but design choices.
Certainly I do not mind when history is slightly bent to make a game more historical. I mean, Civilization 6 is way better than Crusader Kings 2. Am I right, old pal?
Speak for yourself, Fox. Next time I'll see Babylon nuking the Zulu capital, I swear I'll do the same with your house. Anyways, I'm back from Argentina, and as you promised, if we would have done 3 videos together, you would have offered me a drink. So, I think I'll take the best wine in town. Thank you very much!
Wait, what? What you on about? I did not promise you anything.
Are you implying this promise is not historically accurate? Haha, checkmate, Fox!
Ha, you old Dandoz. Anyways, for the rest of you who are still watching this video, I wish to thank you one too many historically accurate times for watching today's video. It is always wonderful to speak freely regarding these big topics, and I hope as usual you enjoyed today's discussion. If you liked the video, do not forget to leave it a like, to share it and to subscribe for more. I wish you a wonderful day, and as always, arrivederci!